when you open up your P5 editor, you're going to start out, you're going to have just these two functions. So remember, functions are verbs. These are things that are going to be doing something. And specifically, we have the setup function, which is only going to run one time, and then the draw function, which is going to run over and over and over. You can think of it as kind of like the frames of an animation. It's going to do something into this canvas here. Once we get a little bit further along and we're working outside of the P5 editor, when we're making our own HTML to hold our code, the canvas can be anywhere in bigger sizes, a wider variety of implementations. So, like I said, our setup function runs once, and our draw function runs over and over and over and over. Inside of our setup function, we're going to use this function, create canvas, and that's going to actually define our canvas. This is our area in which we can work. So it's going to take two parameters, 400 and 400. Those are pixels. The first one is the width of our canvas, and the second one is the height of our canvas. And before we even go any farther, I want to point out, so p5.js.org has a great reference section. And I'll pop a link to this into the chat as well, because this is a very helpful, this is a very helpful resource for us. For example, if I press Command F on my Mac, or Control F if you're on a PC, I can search in the page. So I can say create canvas. And so here I get down here and I can find it and I can read about it. And so, okay, I can see that it's being used, and then I can go down into the description, and it says that I have the width, height, and the renderer. We don't need to worry about this renderer, but I'll just basically say you can have it for two-dimensional things or virtual 3 dimensions. But it's not mandatory. If we see something in these square brackets, that's going to mean that that is an optional parameter. But the ones that we do need are width and height inside of there. So if you're working on code, it's good to just keep this reference section handy. You don't need to keep it open, but just remember that it's there. Remember that it's there for you to use for reference. And okay, so let's go back. Now we know what's going on here. We know we've read what these are doing. Our draw function we know is going to happen over and over. And background, what is this? So, I mean, one good thing about P5 is a lot of the stuff that's happening in there is named in such a way that it's pretty, or not necessarily all the time, but a lot of times it's self-explanatory. The background is going to make a background color in your sketch. And we call a bit of P5 code a sketch. And so this background, why not? Let's go over to reference and let's look for background. So Command F, background. Oh, there we go. So I'll click it. And let's go down to what my options are. Okay, there's a lot of just examples. Description. So we have multiple options for our parameters. We can put in a color. We can put in a value. We can put in a series of values. And what this means, like this might be a little confusing here, but that's okay. We can play around, and there's the examples up above. So I can put in a color, and this color, this is a data type in P5. I can also define a color using RGB values and also an alpha value, a transparency value if I want. I can put in a single number and get a grayscale value, and we'll just forget about these other ones for now. Let's just go back and play with that. So if I say 220, that's why I'm getting this gray. If I ever put in just one number, I'm going to get something between white and black. So that's mostly black. 0 will give us a black as the screen can go. 255 will give us white. And 127 will give us right in the middle. And so now I can, instead of just defining the one value, which is going to give us a grayscale, I can define my red, green, and blue. If they're all the same, I'm going to get the exact same gray. But now I can play with those. So let's say 255. So that's a pretty nice one. I'm going to just leave it with that. So I have this nice muted pink. Background color defined by RGB values. So I'm going to put in these comments here so that I can share this sketch with y'all afterwards. And when you're writing code, you should include comments as well, especially if you're asking for any assistance, because it's very helpful when you can say, like, you can put in a comment that says, like, I'm having trouble with this part. I don't know why this variable is not doing whatever I think it should be. And also, it's really helpful for making sense of code that you wrote in the past. So draw function runs over and over again. Setup function runs once at the beginning. And so now what I'm going to do, I'm going to save this. So I'm signed into my account. You all should be signed into your accounts and have created accounts. So what we're going to do is I'm going to change the name. I can click on here. I'm going to change it to MMP210 Fall 2020 Example 1. And so now, if I save it, now I have this URL, and I can put this, I'll put this into the chat, and I'll also post it on the class notepad afterwards, so that y'all can look through this. Okay, so now when I run the sketch using this play button, it's going to run the code over here. And so now let's go back over to our reference and see what kind of stuff we can add in. So I'll go back to my main reference, and here we have a bit some keywords, some sections of our code. So I'm going to go to shape. Let's go to shape. So these are different shapes that we can draw on the screen. So let's start with an ellipse. So an ellipse is a roundy, curvy thing. And so I'm just going to copy this code over into my editor. And now I'm going to do something that's a mistake. I'm going to do it on purpose. I'm going to put this ellipse right there, right up in the top of my draw function, right first line inside of the draw function. And I want to just, if I could get a volunteer to guess what is going to change in this code.
It'll draw a circle.
You might think it's going to draw a circle, but let's just run it and see. So I have this right up top on line 9, right? The first line inside of my draw function, and I play, I run the code, nothing changed. So this is because everything that happens inside of here is in an order. Remember we were talking about how instruction, when we're giving instruction, the order that we give instruction is important. Going back to the peanut butter and jelly sandwich example, we can't spread the peanut butter before we open it, right? So in this case, we've drawn an ellipse and then we've covered over it with a pink. So if I comment this out, so I can go to any line, and if I press Command or Control, if you're on a PC, Control or Command slash, I can comment out a line of code. And now when I run it, that won't be run. And now I do have an ellipse, but it was just behind that background. So what I want to do is I want to move this. I'll cut that. I want to put it after I draw the background. And now we will see an ellipse. Right? All right. Let me just, I thought I saw something was happening in the chat. Ah, yes, it's the background, correct. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're gonna play with a system variable. So I'll just keep making comments. Ellipse will only be seen if it's on a line of code after the background, because the code runs in order, line by line. Okay. So now we're going to use a system variable. And system variables are bits of information that are built into the programming interface itself. So the first one that we're going to look at is called mouse X. And mouse X is the position of my mouse cursor in the horizontal axis, in the X axis. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make another ellipse. I'm going to say ellipse. Oh, and I guess actually we skipped something, which is, what are these parameters of the ellipse? Let's go back and look at that before we move on. So we have 4 parameters here. Let's scroll down. X position, Y position, width, and height. So I'm just going to make a note of that. Draws an ellipse using X, Y, width, and height. And this actually brings me to, I'm actually going to go back on what I said. We're not going to do another ellipse yet. We're going to talk about X and Y positions. So I'm actually going to switch my camera again over to the Blackboard. And we're going to talk about coordinates. So in math class, you might remember the Cartesian coordinate plane. Oh, this pen is not coming across very well. Let me get a better pen. Okay, you might remember the Cartesian coordinate plane where we have our x-axis and our y-axis. And numbers get bigger this way and this way, right? So this coordinates over in this quadrant are positive and positive. In this coordinate, they're positive and negative because we go x, y, negative and negative, and negative and positive. This is not how it works in P5. Because normally we think about the origin, our 0, 0 point being in the center, but in P5, does anyone want to guess where our origin is?
0, 0.
It is 0, 0. That's correct. But on our screen, in our canvas, it's actually the top left of our canvas. Top left of canvas is our origin point. And so everything is positive in these directions. So all of the coordinates in this area are positive, positive. And we can imagine the coordinates going off into the rest of the off-screen space. So we have coordinates that are negative and positive down here, negative and negative up here, and positive and negative over there. So this can make it a little confusing if you're trying to take like mathematical graphing stuff and just translate it right into P5, because it's not the same. So 0, 0 is the top left of our canvas, and everything that's in our canvas visible has 2 positive coordinates. So for our ellipse is at 5646, which means it's, let's write about here. That means that this to the center is 56 pixels, and 46, and this to the center is 46 pixels. And then we have the width and height, which in this case are equal, and that means that this diameter of this ellipse is 55 pixels. So yeah, that basically just want to remember that we're always starting from the top left of our canvas for our coordinates. All right. So let me switch my camera around again. And share my screen. All right, so there we go. We have our X, Y, width, and height. And we can change any one of those independently. And so, yeah, now I guess in the last 10 minutes of class, I'll just show you one system variable, and then I think we'll call it for the day. So we are going to make one more ellipse. Make one more ellipse using the system variable mouse x. So mouse x is a variable that we don't have to define. It's one that is defined just by the existence of this like interface of this programming architecture. So what we're going to do is we're going to say ellipse, and there's a few things we can do. So let's just use it for position now. We won't get into map yet. That's maybe for next class. Okay, so we'll say our x position will be just mouse x. And notice capitalization is important. Everything needs to agree in capitals, because remember, capital letters are different characters. They're going to access different parts of code. And I'll show you that working and not working in a moment. So our ellipse is now going to be, our x position is going to be tethered to our mouse. Our y position, let's just have it at 100 pixels from the top, and we will have a 20 pixel circle. And so now, if I run this, now I have this circle that follows my mouse.